Well, ladies and gentlemen, may we give a round of applause for the performance of our student in English Education Study Program. Well, now we are now moving to the other agenda or the third panel session of our international webinar or ILEC. Ladies and gentlemen, from Australia, now we're going to fly to the UK because in this morning, in the third session, we already have Dr. Aisling O'Boyle from Queen's University of Belfast. Good morning, Dr. O'Boyle.
Good morning. Good morning. Very nice.
Hi.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for taking your time being with us here.
It's an absolute pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Before we continue, please allow me to again inform everybody here that this session will last for 45 minutes. There will be a 30-minute presentation and another 15-minute for the Q&A session. Everyone here, participants, if you want to ask questions, you can drop your question in the Q&A feature, and then I will be very happy to read all the questions. And later, if we still have time, you also may raise your hand, and then I can choose you and lead you to directly deliver a question to the speaker. And for today's topic, Dr. O'Boyle will talk about English for global volunteering and leadership in the 21st century. For information, ladies and gentlemen, Dr. O'Boyle's research interests are in the relationship between the language and education. These include the analysis of discourse in educational context, academic and professional discourse, and English language learning and teaching, of course. She is particularly interested in application of research in corpus linguistics to education and has been involved in the design, development, and research of a number of spoken academic and learner corpora to investigate the constructions of knowledge in classroom context, RC and speaking skill, and language used in intercultural context. It was very interesting research interests that you have. Hopefully, further our university can have further collaborations with you in upcoming research. Well, without further ado, I think everybody cannot wait to hear and listen to all the presentations that you're going to have. So, Dr. O'Boyle, I hand it over the microphone and screen to you.
Thank you very much. I will first of all say thank you for the invitation. I'm absolutely delighted to be joining you today. I must apologise in advance. I'm losing my voice. It's very cold here in Northern Ireland at the moment, and I've got a bit of a cold. So if I don't talk loud enough, please let me know. And I might have to cough at some point. So please forgive me for that. I'm just going to try to share some slides, if that's okay. Can I go ahead and do that? Brilliant. Okay. Yeah. Do you want to continue? All right. Okay. So yes, just to give you a little bit of background about myself, I really enjoyed being able to listen to the previous speaker. And I think what is very interesting in your conference presentations is that speakers are coming from very different perspectives, different experiences, as well as different countries from around the world. And I think that's wonderful, and something that we need to keep doing. Just to let you know a little bit about who I am, my name is Aisling O'Boyle. I am a senior lecturer in Queen's University, Belfast. I am director of the Centre for Language Education Research there. And I've spent the last 20 years teaching and conducting research related to English language education and in relation to teacher education as well. So my perspective is a little bit different from the previous speaker. One of the things that interests me a lot, and increasingly so as we move through this new millennia, is the relationships that we have with one another. No matter where we are in countries around the world, we have a connectedness. And for me, English language education has continued to grow in ways that we perhaps didn't expect, but it also has to become much more strongly embedded in a number of social issues. And that for me is what is most interesting, and it reflects some of my research interests and some of the projects that I've been engaged with over the last number of years, and they include looking at gender in English language teaching and looking at refugee concerns as well in relation to English language education. So I am delighted to be able to speak to you today about the topic of EFL and global perspectives, and really thinking forward into the future, into what kind of a future that we would like for ourselves and for all of our partners around the world. So thank you very much indeed. Just to okay, hang on. There we go, brilliant. Okay, so just to a bit of perspective on this topic, on this talk, what I would like to do is to explore a little bit about what I think about global perspectives in English language teaching. I think there are a number of different ways that we can all interpret what global perspectives in EFL and ELT are, and I want us just to be a bit explicit about what those are. In thinking about a future, I want us also to engage with what we want life in the 21st century to be like. We're coming out of a pandemic. We are in a world which has a lot of troubles. So what do we want for the future, and how can we best use our experiences, and how can we best provide for the younger generations through education? Part of what I would also like to suggest is that we might want to shift some of our thinking away from an idea of exchange, away from an idea of here is one thing, here is another thing, and we swap and we exchange. We might want to think about something that's slightly more meaningful, that I might suggest, and this involves interaction. I think the previous speaker touched a little bit on this whenever they were going through their principles and thinking about reflection and reflexivity. There's something about I would argue, our exchange, we want to put it like that has to be transformative. Otherwise, why would we do it? If we experience a new country, if we experience a new language, something within us, something that we do, has to be influenced by that or in some way transformed by that. And so I have deliberately here separated the word interaction into inter, which is about moving and crossing around boundaries, but also by action. We all do things, and part of this talk today is really about looking at how we might want to choose carefully the things that we do in the world, and look at how we can maximize potential for learning and for education in the actions that we undertake. In doing so, I would like to exemplify my own experience of working in a study abroad partnership. So for a number of years, I worked as part of my role in the university was to be a director of internationalization. And that was about promoting the kind of exchanges, promoting priorities around global mobility, around cultural development and partnerships. So I want to share a bit of an experience that I had on a study abroad partnership. And I want to use that as a way to reflect back on what I hope I'll cover at the beginning, which is about taking a truly global perspective in English language teaching. And before I go any further, a global perspective, in my view, means that we pay very, very close attention to local perspectives and context perspectives. And I hope that will become clear as we move forward. Okay, can everybody hear me okay? Yeah, okay, that's perfect, great, okay. I usually am much louder than this, so that's okay, great.
It's okay.
Perfect. Okay, what do we mean by global perspectives in English language teaching and English as a foreign language? Well, I suppose I would like to suggest there are a number of ways that we can talk about that.
Really sorry, is the slide hasn't moved yet in purpose, or because we see here still the title of your slide?
Okay. Okay. What I'm looking, it says the screen sharing is paused. Does that mean?
Yeah, we here still see the introductory slides.
Okay. Apologies for that. Let me stop sharing and then I'll reshare. Hopefully that will sort it out for us. Try that one.
I'm sorry if I've noticed it pretty late.
No problem at all. Can you wait? Let me see.
Yeah.
What about now?
Now we are in the slide of global perspective in
Perfect.
EIC.
I'm in the right place. Thank you very much. I really appreciate that. And I suppose just as I should have said at the start, if anything is, if my sound goes or if my slides are not moving, please interrupt me. I don't have any problems being interrupted. So please.
Sure.
So thank you. Thanks very much. So thinking about what global perspectives in English language teaching and English as a foreign language actually mean. Thinking about this presentation, I pulled out just 3 examples of what I would like to highlight. Part of the reason for pulling out different perspectives on global matters in English language teaching is just to indicate that there is more than one way of looking at and thinking about notions, global matters within English language teaching and English language education. Some of you may be familiar with, and I apologise if it's something that you already know. There is an International Association of Teaching English as a Foreign Language, IATEFL, and within IATEFL, the international organisation, there are special interest groups. And I'm just showing you here special interest groups who have interests in global issues. So what do they, and I just want to sort of just read a little bit from their section about what, for them, so for these English language teachers who belong to this organisation and association, what are global issues? What does it mean when we say global issues? So just to start the quotation, so global issues for this particular special interest group are challenges, trends, changes and pressures concerning and facing humanity. To give some examples of what those are, it might be around social inequality. It might be about food shortages, global warming, environmental degradation, a lack of safe drinking water, and the status of teachers across the world, sustainable development, disappearing species, human rights, climate change. Those are some of the issues that they are focused on. And one of the questions that they will often get asked is, why are global issues important in the English language teaching classroom? Isn't it all just about grammar and vocabulary? Well, no, it's not. One of the common responses to why we should look at global issues in English language teaching lie in the idea that we all reside on the one planet. We are, if you like, world citizens. And that's the phrase that they use. So students and teachers alike are world citizens, citizens of the world. And that's not in a political context, but it's very much in a human and environment context. And there are some examples here that some of the work that the special interest group in global issues would concentrate on. So looking at particular issues, social issues in particular places. A second perspective on global concerns and global perspectives very firmly takes the local as the centre. And I don't know if my, here. So increasingly over the last number of years, and I think your previous speaker spoke to this as well, about taking English language teaching as a phenomenon that happens across the world, but moving it out of Anglophone places, moving the power of English language education out of Anglophone places. And this is captured in the notion of decentering English language teaching, where in the past, I would say normally, but it was just traditionally, not normally at all. Traditionally, English language textbooks were produced in Anglophone countries and then exported out to different places. That's really unacceptable. It's not, it's really decontextualized and largely, one can argue, not fit for purpose, for the purposes for which teachers in different places around the world will be using books, materials, examples, text, whatever it might be. And so therefore, a decentering approach to English language teaching focuses very firmly on looking at more context-based approaches, where teachers and practitioners are conducting their own research, they're producing their own materials, and they're designing their own tasks and exercises relevant to the context and the needs and the interests of the students that they actually teach. And this is increasingly so. And just to give you some further references here to have a look at, to go and look. So this is an excellent article here which describes that.
Dr. Aboyle, again, is it supposed to be still in the same slide? Because
Yes.
Oh, okay, good. Thank you.
It is, yeah.
I'm really sorry.
No problem. No problem. I do not mind being interrupted whatsoever. So thank you. So if we have a look here, I hope my mouse is moving here in the English Language Teaching Journal. This article on decentering English language teaching, looking at teacher associations as agents of change. And also this is a really interesting text looking at local research and local perspectives in English language teaching. And I hope that those references, and you may wish to follow up on those, just to give you a flavour of some of the different perspectives around global issues that there are and global perspectives in English language teaching. I won't dwell too much, because it was mentioned by the previous speaker, on the idea of global Englishes. And so deliberately pronouncing it such. One of the things that we have seen movement over the last 20 years is really about recognising the varieties of English, Englishes which exist, and trying to bring that awareness into learners, but also in teacher education programs, and trying to shift some of the attitudes that exist towards so-called standards and standard models. So the three different examples for me there, just about different perspectives on global issues in ELT. I want to move, and I'll tell you, I am moving my slide now. And this may or may not be familiar to you. As we move into thinking about global perspectives, on an international scale, on a global scale, we get education measured in a number of different ways. So I'm sure I'm speaking to colleagues who work in languages and education. So you may well be familiar with global organizations who take account of educational outcomes and progress in all countries across the world. And one organization is the OECD, which you may be familiar with, the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. Some of you may be familiar with the annual PISA study, which is the Programme for International Student Assessment, which measures the abilities of 15-year-olds to use reading, writing, maths, science, and skills. And that's really a map of educational outcomes, educational progress across different countries across the world. One of the things I think is relevant for our discussion here is the notion that has increasingly over the last 5 years, I think, has focused on the idea of a global competence. We are increasingly hearing phrases like global citizens, global futures. And within that discourse, there is the notion of global competence. Again, I think within English language teaching, we suffer from some of these competences and competencies, and they shift every 5 years. But I think within this context, it's useful to understand where we may be going in the future, or even how we want to resist some of the changes in the future. But what is interesting, I think, is that it has already been, I suppose, well established over the last 5 years, that there is a notion of global competence which is important and is considered to be measurable. And I think that's an interesting development that we might want to, consider for the future. What does being globally competent mean? Well, I've highlighted some colours here, and forgive me if they're not the right colours for you, but just to point out some of the matters which define a capacity as a global competence. So being able to look and examine local, global and intercultural issues, being able to understand and appreciate different perspectives, to be able to interact successfully and respectfully with others, and to take responsible action towards sustainability. Those are big asks. Those are significant. Many would argue that they are crucial for our survival, but they are very, very significant. And how do we begin to, within our classrooms, within our schools, within our higher education context, how do we begin to, or how do we already engage with some of these competencies, some of these skills, and some of these capacities that we might want to engage with? The references here, and I would really encourage you to have a look. It's interesting material that's here. And I also just want to, very briefly, I've moved on my slide. Can you see that okay? Perfect. Yeah, grand. Just to give you an idea of the kind of items that are measured in a global competence questionnaire, I just wanted to show you some of these. And I want just, as you're reading through some of these, thinking about, do these topics, do these issues, do they actually appear in your English language classrooms? Do they appear in the curriculum of your schools? The answer may be yes, and that's super. But I mean, are they there? If we look very carefully at this, we can see that within a global competence scale, being able to identify what that might look like, it would be about being able to explain the effect of carbon dioxide on global climate change. If we look over here, how informed are you about the following topics? Migration, international conflict, causes of poverty, equality or inequality amongst men and women and people of different genders in different parts of the world. So these are some of the, if you like, the issues that I referred to back in the global issues special interest group from the International Association of Teaching English as a Foreign Language. And these are just to highlight some of the things that when we're thinking about our lives in the future, we're thinking about our future classrooms, to what extent do we engage with these matters in English language classrooms? Okay. Just by way of signaling that there are materials that can, English language teaching materials, that can support teachers to engage with some of these global issues, to engage with some of these matters that are globally felt across the world. It's just to give you one is a webinar, so you can access it and read the closed captions as well. And the other one is here, it's a Gendering English Language Classrooms Across the World. And this is a book, it's available online, just use that QR code. It's from the British Council and it's a project I was engaged with. These practical lessons come from teachers around the world, showing how one can address some matters, some gender matters within English language classrooms, and from very early on and from beginner levels. So we're seeing not only are these issues important, these competencies, these global competencies are important, but there is some teaching material which exists. Some of it localized, some of it maybe not quite so localized. So we're moving towards that idea of global issues and addressing them within English language teaching contexts. I want us to think a little bit about global competencies are one thing, but we may also want to nurture our local environments as well as engage globally. And this is often captured in the notion of an environmentalist who thought, well, look, think globally, but act locally. Okay, you can think about the world in global terms. You can think about how connected we are, but you can't have your power withdrawn from that. You can do things, and you can do things at a local level. And one of the things in a UK context I'll speak about is over recent years, the focus on 21st century skills. And those being, there's lots of them, but generally I like to kind of think of them as the 4 C's, just because it sounds like Four Seasons pizza, but it's a different kind of, but it's 4 C's. And it's really about critical thinking. It's about communication, creativity, and collaboration. The previous speaker was talking a bit about how it is up to it is within an Indonesian context, and Indonesian stakeholders to be able to define what English for Indonesia and English in Indonesia looks like. And it might be that some of these particular 21st century skills are informing some of those choices around policy. But these very much lie at the crux, at the heart of the seminar or the example that I want to show you now. Okay, sorry, and I'll try and go as quickly as I can through the next piece. Okay. So the example that I want to share with you is one that I was engaged with, and it was focusing on gender issues, and it was focusing on female students who were studying STEM subjects, so STEM, science, technology, engineering, and medicine. I think I might have got those wrong, but you can correct me afterwards. And you may be familiar with the RoboGals. It's about female students helping younger female students to become much more interested in engineering by using robots and training in programming and so on and so forth. So a colleague of mine in Japan was particularly interested in this, and together we wanted to produce an initiative, a joint partnership, which would see the development of young female students who are in National Institutes of Technology, see their capacity built around teaching children information technology, and also doing it through the medium of English to engage with a more global audience. And so we put together what we called a study abroad capacity building initiative. Horrible words, but really what it really means is that students from National Institutes of Technology came over to the UK. We put together a programme which was really twofold, which really was about fostering continued interest in STEM, but also introducing the students to feeling much more empowered and taking on leadership roles within that. So I just want to very briefly go through what that was about. So it was a partnership between the UK and Japan. Within the UK, there was another partnership. So it wasn't just higher education and national institutes. There was also a further education college as well. So we were going across sectors. So this was multi-sectoral. So it wasn't just a university and a school. It was a university, a further education college, and a National Institute of Technology. Obviously, related in there were also local schools in Japan where the female engineering students would go and do their teaching through the medium of English. So that we had quite a specific program and initiative in mind. And so when the young female students came to the UK, to Northern Ireland, we worked on building capacity and initiated this particular program. I want to focus on, obviously, the part that I was responsible for in looking at volunteers for global leadership and classroom communication skills as well. Just to briefly go through this, because I know my time's running out, it just was something that's different and something that I think that we need to be much more aware of whenever we are engaging with meaningful interaction. Okay, so going a bit beyond the cultural exchange and looking at meaningful interaction, being able to sustain long-term relationships, being able to make sure that people have good outcomes from their experiences. Going back to what I said before, having transformative experiences, and not just something that they put in their CV, but something that has actually shifted and changed, makes them see the world in a different way, makes them act in a different way. And we developed this 4-step plan about really trying to work and get to those goals. So what we wanted the students to do was to get to know a different institution. It just wasn't a visit. We wanted them to get to know. So we conducted introductions, we did campus tours, we also matched them up with other students. Why did we do that? We did that because we wanted them to try to begin to see different points of view, to understand that different experiences were possible. We also wanted them to get to know what our shared purposes were. And R is very inclusive here. This is R as in the educators who were involved, the teachers who were involved, and the college lecturers who were also involved. So the hour there is very inclusive. So we did that by, we presented some research on other innovative education and volunteering projects and through discussion. Why was that important? Well, it was really important for the young female volunteers to be able to situate their own volunteering work at a local level within the wider context of global volunteering and trying to address some real global issues here, particularly here in relation to gender inequality. What was also really important is food. And I know people food was really important, and food, sharing social spaces, that's what was really important. You know, we are all human beings, we need nourishment in different ways. But actually, it was another way of helping us to reduce and minimize language anxiety, and also to better understand intentions and motivations. So it was no such thing as a free meal. We were always working all the time. And the fourth step in the program was really to have quite an intensive workshop. I'll just go through very briefly what some of the principles around the workshop were. They were tasks. They were set tasks, very, very relevant to what they were to do in the Japanese classrooms, about teaching young children how to, program a robot.
To interrupt Dr. Borrell, we also still need to keep some for the Q&A.
Sure, no problem.
Yeah, maybe you can.
I'll skip on. Yeah. So anyway, we conducted this workshop, very intense, and really worked very intensively on task-based. So group tasks and discussions were absolutely key. Absolutely key. That's okay. So group task and discussion. Evaluation, well, here are some of the evaluations. Certainly, the tutors reported that there was improved accuracy in the students' presentations. There was a greater frequency of English language use, and there was an increased confidence in using English for volunteer and teaching. One of the things that we reflected upon as educators was this idea of study abroad and exchange actually didn't really explain what happened. For us, we then drew on work by Zhang, who looked at study abroad and looked at people who go on study abroad programs as being space navigators, exploration, navigating different spaces that have different boundaries. There's no such thing as a UK study abroad experience because the UK in itself is diverse. Everyone will have a diverse, different experience. And not all contexts are heterogeneous. Every cultural context, every social context has its own boundaries, has its own unique things. And I suppose one of the other things that we thought about was certainly around a road to empowerment. So clearly we needed to achieve empowerment for these female students because it had a purpose for their future. And I think that's core. That's really core. They could see very early on that what they were doing was actually going to have an impact on their future. And they could see that line, that trajectory quite clearly. So meaningful, concrete preparation for future roles. Okay. And now that's the end. So some conclusions. Well, I would invite us all to think a little bit less about facilitating cultural exchange and communication, and perhaps a little bit more about interacting on global issues and navigating new spaces. Not just word changes, but meaning changes as well. So thank you very much, and I'm really happy to answer any questions.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Obo. There was very interesting presentations. If I were the participant, I got a lot of things to ask actually, since my study also related to global Englishes. So there's a lot of things that I really maybe can further discuss with you later.
Absolutely.
All right. So here we go right to the Q&A session. I believe there were some questions was written in the chat box. Later I will read it for you. But for now, we're going to have our students here to ask you questions. I think for the first, we're going to have Puspa to deliberate your questions. Please, Puspa, the microphone is yours.
Okay, thank you for the opportunity to this. So, hello, Dr. Aisley. My name is Puspa.
Okay. Hi, nice to meet you.
Nowadays, we all know that there's a lot of global issues which are we need to concern, such as global climate change, social issues, and even the international relation. So my question is, as a future English teacher, how do we teach or guide our students later so that they aren't ignorant of global issues, in addition to be a part of good global citizen? That's
Mm,
my question.
Brilliant. Oh, what a brilliant question. Oh, thank you very much, Puspa. I am already really happy about the future of English language teaching
Yeah.
because as a future English language teacher, you have just made me really happy to be able to ask that question. So thank you very much. I, it very much is. I can point to I can point to some teaching materials and around how to teach global issues. But I think we need more. We need more teaching materials which have been designed by new teachers, by people who are training to be teachers. Develop some materials, try them out in the classroom. What worked, what didn't work, and then share those lesson plans with other teachers and other students. I mean, that is really important. That's what we had tried to do with the book that I showed you before, the Gendering ELT lesson plans. That's really what that book was about. Lots and lots of lesson plans from actual teachers who had tested them out and tried them, worked. Some didn't work and they changed them, but they wanted to share them. I think there isn't an option now for global issues not to be in English language teaching. I think it's, what on earth would we be teaching about? If you are going to become a global citizen, it means that you have to engage with things like Sustainable Development Goals. You have to engage with how we are treating our planet, how we are treating each other. That we have to do that now. So I think I'm always of the opinion that we try things out. You might read something, you might see something, you think, do you know what? That's quite a good example of, something being environmentally unfriendly or environmentally friendly.
Yeah.
And you will also be the person who knows best about, will that work in that particular context? Can I also do it a little bit at a time? Don't put all of the world's problems into one English class all at the same time. Think about what can be done gently over time.
Yep.
Project work is amazing. Project work is really fabulous because it then also allows students to find out for themselves, do their own research on climate change, do their own research on gender inequalities. That was one of the examples in the book around gender, where a teacher, it was a boy and a girl, and the boy was like, yeah, there's no such thing as gender inequality. Men and women get paid the same. The teacher then had to go, okay, let's have a look at movie stars. Let's see how much the female movie star gets paid. Let's see how much the male movie star gets paid. So, anything I think that you can do, but I think we have to do it. And I'm really pleased, really pleased with that question. So, and let me know, would you, if you try something out, would you let me know how it goes? Because I'd be really, really happy to hear.
Sure. Thank you very much. So if we want to be global, then being aware to what the global happens. Yeah. So then we can be part of that. Thank you very much, Puspa and Dr. O'Boyle. I think we're going to have one more questions. There's a lot of students here and asking more questions, I believe. So, but then unfortunately we can accommodate them all. Maybe we can start with Minnie.
Yes, sir.
Hi, Minnie.
Hello. Okay. Excuse me. I would like to answer. My question is. Wait. I'm gonna. Okay. In the terms of global English, in the Indonesia cultures, teachers tend to teach us to sound like native. Is this view considered wrong under the concept of global English? Okay. Thank you.
Brilliant. Yeah, I'm
Very
very much
conceptual, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we have to continually work very, very hard to break the idea that a native speaker is the norm, because I think Michelle mentioned it as well. The norm is people who speak English as a lingua franca. So people who speak English as a first language are very much fewer than those who speak English
Yes.
as an international language, and I think we need to raise awareness of that within our classrooms.
Mhm.
So I think sometimes people can get a little bit confused about the differences between global Englishes and then things that they think might not just be proper English. And I use that, my face is expressing as much as my mouth is there. There is a difference. There is a difference. Excuse me one sec, I have to cough. Sorry, beg your pardon. So, the other point that I would like to draw is that just because someone is a native speaker of English doesn't make them a good teacher. And that's something I've been fighting for a long, long time. And I would much rather have a really good teacher who was teaching their first, second, third, fourth, fifth language than someone who just happened to be a native speaker of some variety of English. So let's be clear, there is no one variety of English. There are lots and lots of different. But we do have, there are perceptions of standard varieties. There are perceptions of how things should be pronounced. But I think we need to just focus on good teachers.
Yes.
As primary. Good teachers using language well. That's good and interesting material that makes a difference to their students. That's, I think, going to set us up better for global citizenship.
Yeah, I think I couldn't agree more on that because, right, the most important is not about, as long as people understand my Sundanese English, so they will be just fine to have that
my
one.
Northern Irish English, which nobody understands. But yeah.
Thank you very much, Dr. O'Boyle. All of the part of the talk was reached to our cultural condition here in Indonesia. I believe that further our students and all the participants here are really eager to learn more about how to be more global in teaching our students so they can be ready for a global competency and that they have more competence globally. So again, thank you very much, Dr. O'Boyle, for the amazing and remarkable. And I believe it's very cold there. It's early in the morning, I believe. So thank you very much for making your time to be with us here. And then before we proceeded, please allow us as a committee to hand it over you the certificate.
Oh, brilliant.
To you, so you can take it.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you
very much.
indeed.
And then the next
Really
session will be a
appreciate
photo session. On my count will be in 3, 2, 1. It's a wrap then. Thank you very much, Dr.
Thank you very
O'Boyle.
much.
Thank you very much for
Thank you
the
very much.
amazing
Thank you for the
presentation. Hope we can see
brilliant
you again.
questions. I look forward to that. Take care. All the best.
Thank you.
Bye.